Hey, if you're pregnant over 40, I have just the community for you. It's a private community away from Facebook where women just like you come together to meet and support one another during pregnancy. To sign up for the waitlist, go to over40fabulousandpregnant.com/waitlist and be the first to know when the membership is open. I can't wait to see you inside. Welcome to Over 40 Fabulous and Pregnant. I am your host, Jamie Massey, and you're listening to episode 44. If you're looking for pregnancy stories of women over 40, you've come to the right place. And today on the show, we have Jenna on to share her journey at 43. She has 5 daughters. And she had 4 miscarriages in a row before her last daughter. And when she was pregnant with her last daughter, she started bleeding at 9 weeks after she broke her wrist and her tailbone while they were on vacation, and she assumed the worst. But one of my favorite things about her story is she was determined to catch her own baby during delivery. And I just find that so amazing. It's my new goal. So good. And what's fun about this episode is we have been renovating our house for, piece by piece for a couple years. And during this recording, we had all the carpet removed. We were going to get new flooring in, and there was no way I could have recorded this episode in the office. So I wheeled everything into our closet. So just as a fun note for this episode, and for the transfer, I think last week I was pregnant, and on day 7, I felt ready to take a pregnancy test. I had written that letter, and I heard people's outcomes for taking a test and not taking the test, and I just felt ready for either outcome. And I took it, and it was positive. It was a really fun moment. And then that was Friday, I believe. Monday was the blood work that I had at the doctor. And the doctor called and said I was pregnant. It was so fun to hear those words. She said that my HGC level was 42. Now, I heard someone's story on Instagram. I don't know who it was, where it was, but it was a little bit before that. And she said the doctor wanted her HGC to be 50. And so I said, but do you have a concern about it being 42? And she said, no, it's fine. We're just going to repeat your test on Wednesday and see what your numbers are then. I'm kind of worried, but I'm also not, because I've tested 2 tests by that time. Both were pregnant. And so I wasn't really worried. And I had my blood work done on Wednesday. They call like 3 hours later or something. The nurse called and said that my HGC was 25 and that it would result in a chemical pregnancy. I was really devastated. That day I came home from work, and I had so much built up energy, and I just wanted to run. I haven't felt that in years. I mean, of course, I couldn't run very long, but I did. I tried. I wanted a different feeling than all the pain that I was feeling, and running was going to be it. I tried to go to work the next day, and I lasted till about noon. I thought I could do it, but I couldn't. So I came home and I went to the lake by myself, and I just sat in the water, and it was, kind of meditative and kind of like cleansing, and it was windy that day. So I just kind of let the waves hit me and just kind of feel them hit me. It was kind of a metaphor in the moment that I felt like it was all the bad things, hitting me and how I was responding to them. Was I moving? Was I resisting them? I just found that kind of interesting and metaphorical as I'm like sitting in the water and just kind of thinking. And I came home and read a little bit, and then I napped for like 3 hours. We have one embryo left. In the past, I've been so positive, and I'm just having a hard time with it right now. I'm going to find it, and I'm certain I will not be doing a transfer until I am just 2,000% positive Jamie again. I don't really see a transfer happening for at least 2 or 3 months. I'm not sure, but that's where I see this going. I really want to get my diet back in check. I've gained some weight, and I want to do acupuncture. I loved it. And I want to do the chiropractor again, get my diet. I want to lose some weight, and I want to be ready for embryo number 2. I will keep you updated, but I have some work to do. I have some work to do on myself before transfer number 2. And, I'm not worried about time. That's such a relief. And one thing that happened that day I went to the lake, I just had so much built up energy. And I have been talking about this, building this community for months and months now. And I came home and I just worked on it for hours. And so I am so close to being done with the community. And quite frankly, I have to take some of the stuff I said back. A lot of the stuff that I said that I wanted to do, I don't think I could do. But I think it's going to be amazing, just in a different way. And the old name, let me say this, the old name was Over 40 Pregnancy Society. And I kind of hated it, but I didn't know what else to name it. It was long, it was clunky. I came up with a better name. And it is actually nothing that I even asked y'all about on Instagram. It's so much better. I got different areas for people to talk in. So, if you are TCC or pregnant or postpartum or birth or even motherhood, I made a section for motherhood. So all these little sections of the group you can be a part of kind of individually. So it's almost like a little Facebook group chat inside a bigger community. I think it's going to be really amazing, and I can't wait to finish it. Please hold me to it. It's going to happen. So get ready. I have more motivation to get this community out to you than I've ever had. And it's going to be great. And with that, let's get into Jenna's pregnancy story at 43. Jenna, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
And before we get started, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Right now, I am 47 years old. I am from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but I live in a suburb that's about an hour north in between Milwaukee and Green Bay. I live in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. I have 5 girls. I have a 29-year-old, a 26-year-old, a 12-year-old, 8-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
I love it. 5 girls. And will you tell us a little bit about your pregnancy journey and where it began?
Okay, well, I started when I was 17 years old. So I was still in high school and just got pregnant by accident there. And then we got married, and then we wanted to have a sibling for our baby. So I had a baby when I was 20. And then life happens and we were really busy and we still wanted more children. And it was kind of like you keep hearing as 35 is that deadline. So we were like, oh, well, if we're going to do it, it's gotta happen now. So then I got pregnant at 34. And then I don't really know exactly if we were like, yeah, let's have even more kids, but we got pregnant at 38. But then after that, I think it really was a driving force for my husband was a boy because we were like, okay, our family didn't feel complete. So, and even if it was a girl, that didn't really matter to me so much, but so we wanted to try. And that's when we had a miscarriage actually in between my 4th daughter, like right before her. Then I got pregnant right after that. So we had I've had a total of 5 miscarriages, but 4 were back to back before I had my daughter at 43. So yeah.
I'm sorry about your miscarriages. 4 is a lot. Did they say what was going on?
No, actually for the second miscarriage, I needed a D&C. The other ones I miscarried naturally, but I was already 12 weeks. So they call it like a miscarriage. My body just kept going. So they did the D&C and they asked me if I wanted to do genetic testing. And for some reason I thought it would be helpful, but it wasn't helpful because we found out it was a boy, which really devastated my husband. This is really weird, but when I was pregnant, I walked past a car and it's called a Zephyr. And that's the name that we had picked out for our boy. And I thought, oh, this is a really good sign from the universe that everything's going to be okay. And it's a boy. Well, I miscarried and yeah, it was a boy, but we didn't, it didn't work out. And the genetic testing came back that there was nothing genetically wrong with him. So that really didn't give us any answers whatsoever. And I really honestly regret getting that testing done just because it really devastated my husband so much and put him in a depression, still something that I feel like he deals with. And so I really wish I never would have done that genetic testing, but I did. And yeah, it didn't give us any answers. I did a whole huge panel and my doctor was very, I don't want to say enthusiastic, but she was like every single thing, every test she could think of, she gave me. And nothing came back that there was anything wrong. So she sent me to a specialist and that specialist only gave me that my age was the problem. And that was the problem. And that I needed to do donor eggs, or if anything, I would try that. He said IVF would be the only answer for getting pregnant. And then I thought, I don't like that answer. So I went to another doctor and that doctor pretty much said the same thing. She was very doomsday about my age and that, my eggs were just too old. And I proved it wrong. I'm very proud of that fact.
And so which one was this? This was at 36, right?
At 38 is when I had the miscarriage before that baby. But yeah, so between the ages 41 to 42 is when I had like 4 of them in a row.
Yeah. Will you tell us about that? You were taking a lot of supplements before you even got pregnant.
Yeah. So between the ages of 41 and 42 is when I had those 4 back-to-back miscarriages. And I joined literally any Facebook group I could, was about miscarriages, was about, being over 40 and trying to get pregnant. Yeah. I mean, I was probably in at least like 10 groups. And so if I read somebody saying like, this worked for me, I started taking it. So I was probably taking at least 20, if not more, supplements a day. So, I mean, if somebody would said, this worked for me, I was like, okay. Or if this is supposed to help with egg quality, I started taking it. So if I read it, I started taking it. If I could afford it, I started. And I mean, they're very expensive, those supplements. So yeah, I was taking everything I could get my hands on because I thought, the more the better, I guess. And I saw an herbalist who actually, I don't know if the stuff that I started taking with her helped, but she was very empowering to me and saying that, that women throughout the ages, have gotten pregnant after age 40. So why couldn't you? And she said that I should, have a mantra of that, that I'm capable, that my body is capable of getting pregnant. My body is capable of sustaining a pregnancy and having a healthy baby. And so I kind of kept that kind of to heart, what she said to me, and just kept that determination of, like maybe not this time, but maybe next time, the baby's going to stick. And she had me taking herbal infusion, which was stinging nettle and red raspberry. That tasted, in all honesty, I don't like tea or coffee. It tasted absolutely horrible to me. Like it tasted like dirt water is my only description. It was just tasted horrible to me, but I would drink it down because I was like, maybe this will help, because she said that would help prepare my body for pregnancy. And nutritionally, she told me to start drinking or, eating things with bone broth in it. So I tried to up that. She also suggested cage-free eggs, with making omelets and everything. So I did all of these things and really tried to keep my diet a lot more natural, not processed foods and everything like that. So that was something that I really started to do and try to be a lot healthier. And so I don't know, it's weird because you don't really know what has actually helped, because I was doing like literally everything I could. So I have no idea what helped and what didn't. So I drank that herbal infusion for 9 months straight, like literally every single day. Like I did not miss a day because I'm very all or nothing. So I was like, I'm not going to miss a day. And then I got the norovirus and got really, really sick. And then I stopped doing like pretty much everything. And I just stopped all of the supplements. I literally only did that prenatal vitamin. And then like a month or two later is when I got pregnant with my 3-year-old when I was 43. Yeah.
What's interesting is stinging nettle is like, it gets a lot of nutrients and minerals. And a lot of gardeners use it as a compost, and they make like a compost tea out of it. And, I love the idea that it's, like we are the plant getting all the nutrients from the stinging nettle. I think that's kind of neat.
I mean, when she gave me the, a rundown of all the benefits of stinging nettle, it literally covers like
so many
entire body functioning, And then she added the red raspberry. And, to be honest with you, it's been a couple years. I can't remember exactly what reasoning for the red raspberry was, but yeah, so I used both of those. It was like half and half the infusion was.
Yeah, I bet it was gross. I bet it was. Yeah.
You're not supposed to add anything sweet to it. I didn't put it in juice because juice had sugar in it. So it was like literally just the water and then just that. And it was bad. It was really bad.
You're hardcore.
But I was like, for the end goal.
Yeah.
I just felt like we were supposed to have one more,
Yeah. I hear you. And I know a lot of women right now are thinking, I have, listened to this person take a supplement and I took it too. Because I am guilty of that too. I'm like, that helped? Oh, I need to take it too.
Seriously, I was taking so much. And that probably wasn't really that good either, because who knows what could, like contradict itself or something like that. But because you just are looking for, you're grasping at straws because you're so, especially when you hear like your clock ticking kind of thing, I was trying literally anything I could.
Yeah.
I even did like the Mayan massage. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes.
So I was doing that. Yeah. That was something I was doing. I don't know if that helped or not.
Yeah. You don't know. Will you take us back to that day? Were you late on your cycle? Is that why you took a pregnancy test? How did you find out?
Yeah. If I was late on my cycle because I was pretty regular as far as like 28 days kind of thing. So yeah, I took a test and it was like, oh, here's another test. Yay, it's positive. But then at the same time, we're like, well, it might not work out.
Yeah.
So we weren't as happy with the other pregnancies. We're like, yeah, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. But because this was 4 in a row, we're just like, well, I really hope this works out. We weren't, because, I hated to be disappointed. So I was just kind of like setting myself up for failure, I guess, and thinking
Yeah.
that this might not work out, but I was still in the back of my mind, like maybe not this time, but maybe next time kind of thing. So, I was really happy, especially because at that time I was 43 years old. So I was, the clock was ticking.
Take us back to when you stopped everything and you found out you're pregnant. Take us back to that day. Why did you take another pregnancy test?
Okay, so I took another pregnancy test because I was late and I'm normally really regular. And I had so many pictures of previous pregnancy tests that were positive, but this one they call it like I forget what they call it. It's like a dye stealer or something, that the first line was so dark. And then the next line was really, really light. So it was, I thought, like a good sign. And the other ones were just like the normal colors, where it was just like, they were both pretty much the same color, the same darkness of the color. But this one was so dark that I was like, oh, okay. I kept trying to think of or find signs, from like the universe. I know it sounds hokey, but I kept thinking that there were signs and find things in the universe to tell me like a sign, like this is going to be okay. But yeah, it was a dye stealer. So it was a really, really dark test.
Wow.
Yeah. I was using, and I don't know what it was called. They're like little, like suck-on candies that are supposed to help with nausea. And I was using those like they were going out of style because it just seemed to help keep things a little bit but there wasn't anything. I was on a prescription like Zofran, and that was supposed to help with the nausea. But as far as like the pregnancy portion of it, I just took a prenatal vitamin. And because I have that I don't even know, MTHFR gene, I don't process folic acid. I need to take that folate. So I took Thorne vitamins, which are the prenatal vitamins. And that was pretty much the only thing that I could sometimes get down, but nothing else really through the pregnancy or even trying to get pregnant that I can actually say, because I actually stopped everything beforehand. So yeah, I really can't really give any recommendations for any supplements or anything like that.
Going to your at 9 weeks, you started to bleed.
Yes. And it wasn't just like a little bit of spotting kind of thing, or, you hear it's like, very light. It was clots. It was bright red blood. And I was just like, okay, this one, it's happening again. And I actually, with that pregnancy, had hyperemesis. So I was nauseous. And I mean, like throwing up it's weird because all my other pregnancies, I never had hyperemesis. But with this one, I was throwing up at least 10 times a day. And when I started bleeding, I don't know if like somehow your body and your mind like connect and they're like, no, like you're blocking off the nausea or something, because for like a couple of days, I didn't feel nauseous. It was really weird. So that's why I was like, yeah, all right, it's definitely a miscarriage. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I'm feeling better, that kind of thing. But we were on a family vacation and we went to City Museum in St. Louis. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's a lot of climbing and slides and everything. So I went down a slide, broke my hand, and there was a stop. And I was like, I don't want to go down the next part because I knew I broke my hand. Like I just knew that it was broken and you had to get out of there. And so I had to slide down. And when I slid, I flew and then I broke my tailbone.
Oh my gosh.
So when we got home, I went to the urgent care and they said that I needed to go to the hospital for because they couldn't do anything for the miscarriage part of it. So I went to the hospital and they did an ultrasound. And that's when they said, no, that the baby's heart rate was really strong, that there was nothing with my cervix that was changing. They found small subchorionic hematoma and that I was just supposed to stay off my feet.
Wow.
And ironically enough, like the nausea slowly started to creep back in, which is really weird. I can't explain it. I don't know if I have no idea. It was just really weird. And then I was throwing up again, like 10, 12 times a day. But yeah, I stayed off my feet because first of all, I was so sick. So I just did not want to do anything because the more I did anything or saw things or smelled things, the more I threw up. And with a broken tailbone, they said not to sit on it because it would heal better if I was laying. So, and then I had a broken hand. So I just literally laid for like, I want to say 6 weeks and hardly did anything. I did like bare minimum of parenting. And it was during the summer too. So my kids were like pretty free.
Yeah. What was it like finding out that you didn't have a miscarriage?
I was only 9 weeks and I had a miscarriage at 12 weeks. So I just kept hoping that I was going to reach that benchmark of the 12 weeks because you hear statistically, that then things are going to be better. And I've always heard even, once you have an ultrasound where you have a heartbeat that you're pretty good and that like statistically you're not going to miscarry. But I had so many ultrasounds at all of those miscarriages with heartbeats that, that statistically didn't work out for me like I had hoped. But yeah, so we were, we held on to that picture and we're like, put it on the fridge and we're like, okay, so, like hopefully this one works out. And having such a strong hyperemesis, like that kind of thing, I thought that my hormones maybe were like in overdrive trying to make sure that the pregnancy stayed. I don't know, because I never had that with any of my other pregnancies. And I've talked to so many different people that had hyperemesis. They had it for every single one of their pregnancies. So it was just kind of weird that for my last pregnancy is when I had it really bad. I had hyperemesis. I forget how many months along. I want to say I was close to the end of my pregnancy. I had a dream, and I know it sounds really hokey. And I did have a dream that like I don't know if it was my guardian angel, but somebody was telling me that the reason the pregnancy was successful was that I was laid up with the broken tailbone and the broken hand, and it kept me off my feet. Because normally moms and just people in general, it's always like, get up and go, do this, do this, do this. And you really don't, even though they say, put your feet up, that kind of thing, you really don't take the time to unless they put you on bed rest, which I've never been on. And I don't know if that really helped or not, but yeah, in my dream, it said that was the reason the pregnancy was successful, was because they were watching over me and that kept me off my feet and, got her to stick. And it seems hokey, but it was a dream that like stuck out because when I woke up, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes sense.
And did you find out the gender?
Yes. And because of having 4 girls, we were like, okay, come on.
This is it.
It was so different. The pregnancy was so different with the hyperemesis. I was like, okay, maybe, like this is what it's like to have a boy, at least for me. And then we didn't do, wasn't through the ultrasound. It was actually through the genetic blood test that they do. And I was like probably 10 weeks pregnant. They just called up and said, so keep those pink clothes. And we're like, oh, all right, cool. I don't even know how I saw the name Aveline, and it means longed for. And so I thought this was the perfect name for her. So she right away was Aveline, because the meaning meant a lot.
I love that. And the rest of the pregnancy, did you feel nauseous throughout the pregnancy? Was it just the first trimester?
The 2 trimesters that I had that I was throwing up, like it seemed nonstop, but when I look back, it was probably about maybe like 10 times a day. It was smells, like going to the bathroom was, even though there's nothing that smells in the bathroom, but knowing that that's where I throw up a lot, just like so many things I was just throwing up so much. And it lasted, I want to say, until I was about maybe like 27 weeks pregnant, 26 weeks pregnant. And then all of a sudden it kind of just went away. And I thought that was really scary because I thought, it was so strong and I was just, okay, this is really bad. So they did do ultrasounds. I did have gestational diabetes, so I was monitored a lot more, I feel. So I had a lot more ultrasounds, and everything was always okay. So yeah, it was just really weird. The hyperemesis just went away.
Weird. Did you need to take insulin or anything for it?
So for my fourth pregnancy, I had the gestational diabetes, and I was able to do it just by the diet. I was very, very strict about the diet and about the carbs and everything, and pricking your finger, 2 hours, I think it was 2 hours after. It's been a while. And so then I kind of knew that I was going to have gestational diabetes. Like it wasn't, like, oh, I might not have it this time. I knew. Yeah. So I just started monitoring, and I could tell that if I would have, like say pasta or a lot of carbs, my numbers were really high. So I was very strict. Plus I was throwing up a lot. So I was very strict about making sure that by diet wise, my carbs were really low. I ate a lot of omelets. I mean, that was kind of like my go-to was omelets and like chicken. And that was pretty much what I ate most of the pregnancy. So after she was born, I was like, oh my gosh, give me some pasta.
Yeah, I bet.
Or, because I didn't eat, like sweets or anything like that. I was very strict because I heard, I just was really scared about the insulin thing, and I wanted to be as natural as I could. And I didn't want extra interventions once the baby was like born. I was just really worried about that golden hour and her, with the sugars and everything. So I was really, really strict, and I feel really, really lucky that I didn't have to use, insulin or anything like that. So diet was what I did.
That's
and
great.
Actually, it helped me because I'm one of those people that I gain like 65 pounds when I'm pregnant. Even when I was 17, going to school and walking to work and everything like that. I was really thin at the time. I gained 65 pounds. Like literally every pregnancy, I gained a lot. With the last 2 pregnancies, it wasn't as much, but it was still but the last pregnancy with the hyperemesis, yeah, I didn't gain as much.
What's the difference between pregnancy at, say, 17 and 43?
I read so many people that they're so tired and, it has to be, because of their age or anything. But I think just pregnancy really takes it out of you. And I really, as far as that goes, I was tired when I was 17 and I was tired when I was 43. And as far as just everything, I just felt so grateful for everything. So even though I was throwing up and I was like, okay, but it's, I was like grateful that this was happening because, you hear after 35, like you're pretty much done. So I was just so grateful and, kept thinking of the end goal while I was throwing up all the time. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you're tired, but I feel like you're making a baby, that's to be expected. So I really didn't feel any different as far as my ages go. And even after the baby was born, I don't feel like my age played a factor in anything. And maybe that's because my mindset was, if you're having a baby at 40, 45 or whatever, and your body's able to do it, that your body is able to do it, so that I don't feel like the age really mattered because your body was able to do it, if that makes any sense.
Do you think that this was your hardest pregnancy? Where does that fall?
Oh, yes, it was my hardest pregnancy because I didn't have hyperemesis with any other pregnancy. The gestational diabetes in my 4th pregnancy made me feel like a failure made me feel fat. Honestly, it made me feel like a failure and fat until I read that it really has to do with the placenta and that it really, even like skinny people, that kind of, or people that only gain, 10 pounds kind of people can get gestational diabetes, and that it isn't because you're lazy or because, you are eating the wrong stuff, that it's just the way your body is and the placenta is. That was something that like, I had to deal with when in my fourth pregnancy. And after realizing the reality that it really was out of my control, it didn't hit me as bad when I got, when I realized, yeah, I got it again. And so I didn't feel like because you kind of feel like a failure when you get, like when you take that test and you drink that really sugary water or whatever, drink or whatever. And then they're like, you failed it. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm such a failure, But once I realized and read up on it that, it really is out of your control, that the gestational diabetes didn't feel that big of a deal. And yes, but the hyperemesis made it. And because I had, the broken hand and the broken tailbone, I was just I was a hot mess. But as far as like the pregnancy itself goes, it was just like all my other ones. I have had like a facet problem with my back ever since I was pregnant with my 17-year-old. So I've always had a bad back. So as far as like the back pain and everything, I was kind of used to it. But the pregnancy itself, the hyperemesis was really tough. It was really tough. It took a lot out of me. So I feel for anybody who has it more than one pregnancy, any one pregnancy at all, it's tough. But in the end, it's worth it. You get a baby out of it. So,
of course.
Yes.
And so this was your fifth baby. How did you prepare for birth and for baby coming home?
Okay. So I actually did training to be a doula after I had my second daughter. And I loved the idea of empowering women, of less medical intervention, of that kind of thing. And so I went to the schooling for it and everything. But when I was doing it, I realized that I was on call and I had two little ones at the time. And back then, now this was many, many years ago, it was like you got $200. And so I was like, I'm like doing this and I'm not really getting that much. It was so stressful to tell my husband, okay, so if it happens tomorrow, they have gymnastics and make sure they wear this outfit. Because you know how guys dress kids, right? They're not even outfits. He picks out, so I was like, so pick out this and pick out this. So every day I was like, so anyways, being a doula was something that I thought was really important, but it was too stressful for me. So when I was pregnant and we could afford it, so for my last two pregnancies, I had a doula, and my last doula was a lot better than my fourth doula. She was worth her weight in gold because I know a lot of people are like, no, I just want my husband in there. I just want it to be like that. But my husband had the best intentions, but he sat there very dumbfounded as what to do to help me. Yeah. And so she was very proactive in saying, okay, let's do this with her. Let's press on her hips. Let's move her in this position. How about she leans on you? So she really incorporated my husband. The last doula I had was, she should be at everybody's birth because she was amazing. Mm-hmm. I wish she's not a doula anymore. She is actually going for a midwife, but she was amazing. And I swear, I think everybody should have a doula because they're so helpful. And she was also a massage therapist. So she knew like positions and she like pressed on my hips. And she empowered me to do what I initially wanted to do, which was to be completely pain, no interventions, no medicine at all, no drugs. Mm-hmm. And she kept me, we stayed at home as long as we could. With all the other ones, it was like, oh my gosh, we have to get to the hospital kind of thing. Well, for my first two, I was induced. And that was another thing I didn't know at the time. I was only 17 that, doctors, I think, really push Pitocin and they really push, things that I think are going to be easier for them, here, let's give you the Pitocin, it'll speed things up, but it really puts your body on a toll because your body's not going through it naturally. And so I waited until I went in naturally with all of the other ones. And I was lucky that I didn't have to be induced and that they weren't pushing it because of my age. Because I keep hearing so many people that are, after 40, my doctor says they're going to induce me, and I was lucky that my doctor wasn't a very, your age, everything's a risk because of your age. She just treated me like a normal pregnant lady, which I was really grateful for because I hear so many horror stories about people that have doctors that are like, oh, you're high risk, you're high risk. We got to do this because you're high risk. She was really, just really good about not making me feel like a freak of nature.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I had a doula for the last two, and I think everybody should have a doula.
Now, did she help you before you even started labor?
I had meetings with her a couple of times to go over my birth plan. And my birth plan, the last one for my fifth one, I wanted to pull the baby out myself. I don't know why
love that.
I wanted to do that. It was just something that I was like, this is really important to me. I made sure my doctor knew about it. So she met with me and we did the birth plan, and all of my babies I breastfed. So I wanted, to start breastfeeding as soon as possible. And because she was a massage therapist, I got massages out of it. So the package came with like some pregnancy massage, kind of thing, which I had never done before. And if I had any questions, anything, she was there. But
before we get into your birth, how did you prepare for birth and baby? Like classes? Did you have all the stuff from the other babies, that sort of thing?
I really never did any of the breathing that like the classes kind of talk about. So we didn't do any classes for the last one, or for the last two, because they really, I think they keep you informed that it's a natural process, and they kind of really, I think, are good for the dad because they hear, she's going to be out of control. She's not going to like you. She's not going to want you to touch her, like those kind of things, just to be prepared. But yeah, for the last one, I didn't do any sort of classes, and I had literally, because my daughter was 4 at the time, so I still had all of the stuff. So I didn't have to really prepare much. It was all at my house.
That's awesome. So talk us through the day you went into labor. What was it like? What were you doing? Start from there.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. I actually had 2 days prior very consistent contractions where I like was timing them, and it was my husband's birthday, and I was timing them, and I was like, I don't want to get him excited because I was afraid that it would be false or something. So I was timing them. I'm like, oh wow, they're like every half hour. But then a couple, like within, I had them, really consistent, but they never got really much closer. And then it just stopped. So then 2 days later, that started again, where the Braxton Hicks contractions were being very consistent and they were getting a little bit stronger. But then I thought, okay, well, that just happened 2 days ago. It's probably just a false alarm. So I didn't want to like get anybody involved. But then they were getting a little bit stronger. So it was a very gradual progression, which is something so different because my first 2 births were induced, and they were just like, hello, you're in labor and it's going to be horrible. And it really, that Pitocin really affected me, and it didn't really progress me so it was like a very long thing. So it was really neat for me anyways to see the natural process of it, because it was a slow progression where your body was getting used to the contractions, I guess. It was just so much more natural than the Pitocin. Like, and I know some people need it, but for me, if I didn't have to have it, I was very adamant, like, tell me the reasons why I have to have it, because otherwise don't give it to me. So yeah, it was a very gradual progression. And then I was like, okay, this is actually really being more consistent. They were getting stronger. So then I had my husband come back or home from work, and I still didn't call the doula because I was like, just to be on the safe side. And my husband's like, okay, but the doula is very good, and she makes sure the husband has her cell phone too. So he was like, so she's in labor, I'm pretty sure. So then that's when she reached out to me and was like, Jenna, are you in labor? And I'm like, maybe, but this happened 2 days ago and it stopped. So she came and had me do a lot of different positions to keep the labor going. Because
can you describe them?
One of the last ultrasounds that I had, or the last ultrasound, the baby wasn't completely in the right position. So I was so afraid of like a C-section and everything. And so she had me on my couch, on my knees, with my hands on the floor during every contraction. to help get the baby in the right position.
Okay.
And so right when the contraction would start, I would go in that position. And I don't know if it worked or not. I mean, I know it worked because like the baby was in the right position, and because I keep hearing about how they have to turn the baby and how painful that is and everything. So I was trying to avoid that. I also did acupuncture too. That was supposed to help with the position of the baby and everything like that. So I don't know which one helped, but it worked. So yeah, every contraction I would lean forward, and I also had a birthing ball at home. And so in between contractions, I was doing a lot of bouncing on the birthing ball and like kind of doing like circles with my hips to help open things up basically. And she also had me do, and I don't want to pronounce it wrong. I think it's called a rebozo or something. I'd have to look it up. It's like a piece of fabric that she put on my belly while I was on my hands and knees and kind of like cradled my belly during the contraction. And are you looking it up right now?
I think you're right.
At how you pronounce it? I'm so bad at pronunciations.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but the way you said it, it sounds like Rebozo.
Yeah. And so she had me doing that, and that really helped with the pain. So yeah, and basically she had this like long piece of fabric that she put, under my belly and like kind of like moved it around during the contractions.
And it helped?
It did help. Yeah. And actually the other thing that helped me a great deal was when my hips were being pushed together during the contractions. I don't know if it's something to focus on or if it does help somehow, but that really helped with the pain. And yeah, she is literally worth her weight in gold. She was amazing. And yeah, just kept telling me things like, your body knows what it's doing. Cause that was something like you feel like you're out of control when you're in labor, is that you're like just out of control because it's happening to you and you can't do anything about it. And she kept reminding me that my body knows what it's doing. My body is doing what needs to be done right now. And that it's a good thing. It's a good thing. The contractions are helping to push the baby, that kind of thing. And keeping that in the back of my mind, I feel was helpful to me. Anyways. I know it sounds weird, but yeah. So once the contractions were, I want to say like 3 minutes apart. And I don't know if they're maybe supposed to be a minute in length. I don't know, whatever they took. That's when we went to the hospital, and her heart rate was, because my plan was to walk around as much as possible. But her heart rate wasn't doing what they wanted during a contraction. So I was stuck on the monitors. So I could move to a certain degree as long as the cords were, but I still had to stay in my room. I wasn't allowed to walk around. But I did a lot of standing and rocking, and I used that birth ball, man. I was always on that birth ball, rotating my hips and everything. And before that, I guess I should mention that they always say like going to the bathroom, like sitting on the toilet because your hips are open. I had a lot of contractions on the toilet because they didn't seem like it seemed to somehow help with the pain, which seems weird. So I had a lot of contractions in the bathroom before we went to the hospital. But yeah, once I was in the hospital, her heart rate wasn't doing what they wanted. And
do you remember how far along, like dilated you were when you got to the hospital?
5 inches. Yes. I was like, because I was
5 centimeters.
5 centimeters. Oh my gosh. 5. Yeah, that would be horrible. 5 centimeters. And I was like, this time it's going to, because they always make it as like a benchmark, like, oh, you're only 3 centimeters, so I thought this time I'm going in, it's going to be like, I'm almost ready to give birth. And then you hear, oh, you're only 5 centimeters. And you feel so defeated because you're like, no, but I've been in labor forever and the contractions are really bad. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, this is going to be like so many more hours of this because I'm only at 5 or 6 centimeters. And
I was impressed you were at 5 when you got to the hospital.
Well, because I was in labor for so long that it just seemed like, oh, it's got to be, you hear, oh, after every birth, it's going to get easier kind of thing. But no, didn't. And then she, reminded me like, that's a number. She's like, it doesn't matter. You can literally go from 5 to 10 centimeters within a couple minutes. It's not a big thing, because that's the other thing is that you just feel like so defeated, and I did. And then I was like, okay, I got this. So, I mean, she just kept me, she was really good. And she was really good with keeping my husband involved, like it was a very loving experience with my husband and everything, because she really kept him involved. I feel like people think like a doula is going to take over or something. And I think a really good doula is going to, keep everybody, together. And she even had me try to put the blanket over my head and his head and put my arms around his shoulders. Cause she said sometimes like smelling like your husband or something like that. And like being really close is going to like help with endorphins and all this other kind of stuff. Well, it just annoyed me. So that didn't work out so good. But the best thing for me that I found was the whole rocking. Like I just did a lot of rocking, and in between during contractions, I did it was like instinctive rocking. I just did a lot of rocking, and she kept changing positions, like, okay, well, let's try a couple contractions on your hands and knees on the bed with the birth ball and like leaning over it. But it's just like, I automatically was just always rocking. It was just like, it was somehow helpful.
Now, did you ever want pain relief during labor? Were you ready to go take it back?
I had like a shot with like, that was the most pain medic. I didn't want to do an epidural because when I was a doula, I saw one of my births. I only was at 2 births, but one of them was an epidural, and it was so detached because she couldn't feel where to push, and we were holding up her legs. And so for me, I wanted to see if I could do it naturally, So like for every one of my births, I never did the epidural. I did do pain medication, which was, oh gosh, I can't remember what the shot was. It was just like a shot, and they could only give it to you like maybe like 1 or 2 times. And I don't remember. I want to say it's like Nubane, or it was something, and it only lasted for a little bit, and I wanted to not have that. I wanted to just try to do it completely natural. And my goal was to pull her out myself. And her heart rate started to, I think, drop a lot. And so my doctor was like, okay, we're going to break your waters. And she's like, so it might be really intense, but she wanted to get her out. And I was like, I didn't know if like, okay, if this isn't going to work out, is it going to be a C-section kind of thing? So I was like, yeah, do what you got to do. I guess I have to backtrack. When I had my second daughter, they broke the water as a way to induce me. And it didn't do anything for me. And they gave me Pitocin too after a couple hours of the water being broken and nothing happening. And so when she said she was going to break the water, I was like, well, the last time, many pregnancies ago, it didn't really help me, but okay, kind of thing. And my contractions were really bad. They went to like a bazillion past that. It was so horrible. And in my head, I thought, oh my gosh, is there going to be hours of this? And she broke my water, and within less than an hour, the baby was already born. Like I literally went from like probably 6 centimeters to 10 centimeters within like a half an hour or something. Wow. It was so fast and just mind blowing because it was only a couple of contractions. Yeah, that's right. It was only a couple of contractions that she broke my water. And in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be hours of this. Yes, it was only like, I want to say 3 or 4 contractions after my water's broken that I was like, I feel like I have to push. And they were like, really? No, because I was only at like 5 or 6 kind of thing. And then they checked me and they're like, yep, she's ready to push. And then I was on my hands and knees. And I thought, okay, this is just how I'm going to have the baby. And they're like, remember, Jenna, you wanted to pull the baby out yourself. It's going to be a lot easier if you move. But like, I was in so much insane pain that I felt so out of control that I was like, are you sure I can actually move at this point? Because I was already pushing. And they're like, yep, you can move. So they reminded me, and they were very stern, which the nurses around them later were like, they were kind of like not standoffish, but they were, I can't even think of the word, but that both my doula and my doctor were very stern with me because they were like, no, Jenna, this is what you want to do. Because they were very adamant, because I was very adamant beforehand with the whole pulling the baby out myself kind of thing. So I did get on my back, and then they were like, okay, it's now, the head's coming out, get your hands down there. And I was like, kind of dumbfounded that, oh yeah, duh, this is what I want to do. It's like, I almost forgot something that I was like pushing for like the whole 9 months kind of thing. And then, yeah, I was able to pull her out myself. And that really felt like insanely empowering. I mean, it was like, I am woman, hear me roar, I got this kind of thing. So that was like probably the best out of all of my births, the best one, just because I was completely medication free. I was able to, even though I had that little glitch of I can't walk around because of her heart rate kind of thing, pulling her out was just, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is a new goal for me. I want to do it too.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Beautiful.
was, yeah. But yeah, now that I think about it, yeah, she broke my water and I only had a couple contractions, but in my head, I was thinking it's going to be so many hours later. And it was really fast. And then I just felt the urge to push, and they checked and they're like, yep, she's crowning.
And so was it anything important to you, keeping the placenta or delayed cord clamping, any of that?
I was very adamant about the delayed cord clamping, but it seems like the doctors for them are like, okay, well, it's been, like a really short, I've heard of people delaying the cord clamping and keeping the placenta connected for like hours, kind of thing. But in the medical thing, it just seemed like the hospitals were like, after, I want to say it was only like a minute or two, and then they clamped the cord. And I had thought about doing the placenta encapsulation, but then I was reading so many conflicting reports and like different like things on it that your body was expelling it. So therefore you don't need to take those encapsulations kind of thing. So I just thought, well, I was fine because I was lucky. I've never had postpartum depression. And so I thought, well, all the other births were fine. So I didn't do the encapsulation or anything like that.
Was skin to skin important to you?
Yes. And the one other thing that was important to me was I didn't want they put that goopy stuff in the baby's eyes, that like erythromycin or something. I wanted that to be delayed as long as possible, because the babies are so wide awake after they're born. And there's that golden hour they talk about, where they're awake and you can breastfeed. And so I was, very adamant that if the baby was healthy and if she could stay by me, and to delay the goopy stuff, because then their eyes are all like, like they have goopy stuff in their eyes. And I also delayed her bath. I feel like as you know more, you do more and you do better. So through all of my pregnancies, I kind of changed what my thought process was of like things to do. And, they always talk about their baby's first bath. Let's do that in the hospital kind of thing. But after doing all sorts of reading and everything, they say, that like vernix or whatever that is on their skin is like a natural lotion, basically, to keep their skin, like not from being dry, but that kind of thing, moisturize. That's the word I was looking for, moisturize. And so I was very adamant that she didn't have her bath, and we actually didn't give her her first bath until she got home from the hospital, because she had, like her skin, had that on there, and you're supposed to rub it in and all that kind of stuff. And I also didn't want it, like you feel like, oh, I want to take a shower right away. But they say that your scent is a big factor for them for everything. So I waited as long as I could before I was like, I really need a shower. I want to say it was like the first, like, I didn't take the shower until the next day, because I just kept reading that, your scent is very important and everything, and they can smell that. So I delayed all that kind of stuff.
And do you think that made a difference?
I don't know. I was so lucky, and I am very proud of the fact that even as a 17-year-old, I was very adamant about breastfeeding.
Mhm.
And so I had no family members to look up to and say, oh, look at they breastfed. So I had no people to look up to that, like promoted breastfeeding for me back when I was 17. But I just read how it's supposed to be so amazing for the baby and it's natural and all that kind of stuff. So I was literally the only like high school, person in my class that was breastfeeding. Everybody else like went straight to formula. And I was really lucky that my first baby was like amazing at breastfeeding and it just was very seamless. The milk came in and I really didn't have any problems. And then my second baby seemed a lot hungrier and wanted the milk a lot faster because the milk doesn't come in until like maybe like 48 hours, I want to say, or something like that. So they have the colostrum and I thought, oh my gosh, she's so hungry. So she would have been my first. I don't know how breastfeeding would have went because I had that knowledge of just keep at it. The milk will come in kind of thing. And so that whole supply and demand, the more they nurse on you, the more milk you produce. So I was really lucky that I had that knowledge in the back of my mind from my first daughter. So with all of my babies, I just was I kept at it. Breastfeeding, I feel like, is something that you just have to be really determined about. There's so many people that say like their milk didn't come in. And I know statistically, it's a very small number that it's like medically like where you can't breastfeed. And so for me anyways, I don't look down on anybody that does formula, but for me, I felt very, very strongly that I wanted to breastfeed my children.
Mhm.
And I was so lucky that I was able to, and that everything I had one baby that had thrush. I had, mastitis where I had the infections and everything, but I was so determined that this was going to work that I kept at it. And you are tired after the baby's born and you're the only one who can give the milk and you want to go back to sleep and you're like, oh, that you look over and you see your husband sleeping and you're like, that's awesome. But I was just very determined to breastfeed. And so I've been very grateful and lucky that I was able to breastfeed all of my babies.
Yeah,
And
that's amazing.
I have a 3-year-old who is still breastfeeding.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
I was thinking the 17-year-old me would give up on breastfeeding real quick.
yeah, I don't know how I don't know how I look back and I'm like, wow, because everybody around me was doing formula and I just felt like it's natural, like that's what they're for. That's the milk is made for them. And then when I was in college, was doing a paper and I found it so fascinating that if you travel, let's say you're in a cold like climate, your milk is going to have more fat. And because it's like a cold climate. And then let's say you like travel on vacation or something to a really, really warm climate, your milk will gradually start having a higher like not water content, but more of like for hydration. Oh my gosh, I couldn't think. Sorry. So your milk will change for the climate. And I thought that was insanely fascinating.
Yeah.
And then, if you pick up a germ, your milk will start making antibodies for it. And so I just found the entire thing, I'm very pro breastfeeding, but I just found the entire thing so empowering because your body was meant to do that. And the milk is like completely tailored to the baby.
Mhm.
And yeah, when I would have a cold, I was so lucky that my daughters didn't get sick because if I got a cold, they had the antibodies and they didn't get like their first cold, at least my first two, until I stopped breastfeeding, which was like really crazy. But then I had kids in school for my last kids. So yeah, they did get colds, but I really feel like their colds weren't as bad as my cold probably was, or they would have been if I wasn't breastfeeding.
Mhm.
Because breastfeeding is just like, the more you read about it and the more you learn about it is so fascinating because it's like liquid gold,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it is insane, like how perfect it is tailored to your baby. It's just insane.
Yeah. What are your goals for breastfeeding your daughter, your 3-year-old? Are you going to keep going?
It's weird because with my first daughter, she was like a year and a half. And then she kind of weaned herself but when I look back, she probably was just going through a little nursing strike and I probably could have breastfed her more. but I was only like 18 at the time. So I was like, oh, I guess we're done breastfeeding. So then my next daughter, she was almost 2. And then for a selfish reason, I wanted to stop breastfeeding because I wanted to go. That was during the phentermine thing, the fen. I don't know if you remember that. Maybe. Yeah, it was like a diet drug that you could get a prescription for.
Yes.
And you couldn't take it while you were breastfeeding. And so I was like, oh, I'm, because I did hold on to, that people say breastfeeding, you lose so much weight. And, it's like amazing. Well, for me, I never lost all sorts of weight from breastfeeding. I just kind of held on to it all. No matter what I did, I just never could really lose that much weight. I wasn't one of those lucky ones that breastfeeding was like this amazing diet for people, And so when I was like 20, well, no, I would be 20, almost 22 at the time because I had her when I was 20. So when I was 22, I was like, I really want to, get thin or something. So I weaned her myself and we cut down feedings and everything. So I weaned her. Then my next daughter, she was 3.5. And then I got pregnant and your boobs get sensitive, or at least mine did. And so then I was like, okay, maybe we should stop nursing. And then my milk kind of dried up. And so for her, she was just like, mommy, there's no more milk kind of thing. So it was a natural kind of weaning. So she did a little bit of, I guess it's called dry nursing, where she wasn't, I don't think, really getting any milk at that point. And then it just kind of stopped. It was a very natural thing. Then for my next daughter, it got longer and longer. My next daughter was over 4 and she was still breastfeeding, which my 17-year-old self would probably be like, ew, that's so gross. Why? But it just seemed natural. And when you hear throughout the world that the average age is between, I want to say like 2 and 7 or something weird like that, it's like a really high age. I would never personally breastfeed a 7-year-old, but anyways, so I did the same kind of thing where once my milk started to dry up, then we did, you're going to stop breastfeeding kind of day. So but I didn't stop her. And then she just kind of got less and less because there really wasn't any milk at that point. And then we had a goal where we're like, okay, when you stop breastfeeding, you're going to get this toy kind of thing. So she picked out a toy and then we let her get a cake. And so we celebrated, yay, you stopped breastfeeding. And so now I have a 3-year-old and I'm just kind of letting her take the reins. And whenever she wants to stop, and she sometimes nurses more than a newborn on some days.
Wow.
I'm just kind of waiting to see how that's going to go. Because every other time it was kind of like a pregnancy stopped it. But I mean, now I'm 47, so I don't really think that's going to happen. So yeah, we'll see how long we go. I'm thinking she'll be at least 4 because everyone kind of got older and older. So yeah. I'm thinking she'll be at least 4.
I'm impressed that you can have milk for that long.
Yes. And as long it's supply and demand, as long as the more you nurse, the more milk you will have kind of thing. So I know a lot of people will try to top off with formula, or they do both and both, but then you the baby digests the formula differently and it takes longer to digest the formula. So then you don't have to breastfeed as much. And so then you're not making as much. And then it just kind of downfalls from there, So I feel like if you keep at it, I just want to be really positive about breastfeeding. If you really want to do it and you keep at it, you can do this. Your body was meant to do this. But yeah, I know and I even also was very adamant about nookies or pacifiers because of the nipple confusion. So I made sure that I want to say the first at least 6 weeks or more, there was no nookies ever given. And I know they had to do some kind of test or something with my daughter was jaundice, and they wanted to give her a nookie with sugar water in it when they were taking the blood from her because then she wouldn't move around as much or something. And I was like, no, nipple confusion. So they use a little cup kind of thing. You can use a little cup to give them the sugar water or whatever. I was very adamant, no, nookies. I didn't want nipple confusion. I don't know if it helped make my breastfeeding successful or not, but I was no nipple confusion.
I love how passionate you are about breastfeeding. You can really tell.
I went to the La Leche League meetings and everything, which is a really good support when you have questions and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the person that in my area that runs it is like the breastfeeding guru. So like because there's so many doctors that will be like, oh, well, if you're on this medication, you should probably stop breastfeeding, or, oh, if you need this test, you're going to have to pump and dump kind of thing. But doctors are really going on the air of caution. So they just say these things, but actually there might be another medication that you could take that is more compatible with breastfeeding, or they say so much for pump and dump, but you really don't have to pump and dump. Your body filters through it. And there's like this huge book, and there's different, I think it's like LacMed or something online that you can just put in the medication that they want to give you, and you can see how like compatible it is with breastfeeding, and it will tell you ones that might be better for breastfeeding. Like if you have to be on an antibiotic or something, there's certain antibiotics that you should not take when you're breastfeeding, but there's ones that are more compatible that you can take. So yeah. And if I would ever have any questions, I would literally just like message the La Leche League leader here. And she just like would take screenshots, and she was very helpful as far as, what medication works, what doesn't work kind of thing. So there's so many resources out there, especially now with the internet, that I didn't have back when I was like 20 years old, that are so helpful for, moms in general, just for everything.
That's awesome.
Makes, I feel you more empowered,
Yeah. To make your own decisions. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, how was your recovery?
I was really lucky. I did not have postpartum depression with any of my babies. So I was also lucky with the last baby. I did not need an episiotomy. I was really adamant about not having one for because the first two, they just automatically cut me without even asking me. And I was so young that I didn't know like, hey, I have a choice, or, that kind of thing. So those recoveries with an episiotomy were a lot more painful. They were just painful. With my last daughter, she was actually my smallest baby. So that probably helped with the whole not needing an episiotomy, because she was tiny. She was my tiniest baby. She was like 6 pounds, 11 ounces. Even though they say every baby gets bigger, I think because of the hyperemesis and being very because I had one doctor that filled in for my other doctor that was really, really horrible about having gestational diabetes, and the baby can just die in utero. She was very scare tactic Tuesday, very horrible. And so I was very adamant about the carbs and everything. I just think that that's probably why she was so much smaller than my other babies. So I was lucky I didn't have an episiotomy. So it felt like, I don't want to say a cakewalk, but it just felt so much better than all the other times that I was cut. Because my third daughter, I had learned hey, you don't need an episiotomy. It's not, something that's routine you have to do. But I would push, and she just no matter what was not coming out, it would just be where she would go back kind of in, it wasn't happening no matter how much I was trying. And I even had the broken blood vessels all over my face from pushing so much. Wow. And so then the doctor was like, I know you don't want one. And she's like, but I think you need one. And I was like, okay. And then she was born right after that. So it's you kind of have to take the punches or whatever, and just kind of go with it. And so I, gave in, and she was born, and it was a smaller episiotomy. And then the next one, I can't even remember if I must have had an episiotomy, but the last one, I definitely didn't have one. Yeah. If you can skip that, it's so much better for it didn't hurt as much. It just seemed like I healed up so much faster because I didn't have all these stitches. Yeah. For my fourth one, I did have an episiotomy because the stitches somehow came out. And so I was stitched up and then not stitched up. So I had to go back in when she was a couple days old and re-get an episiotomy. Oh. Right. I forgot about that. How can you forget about these things, right?
Because you want to.
I was I was putting those witch hazel, kind of pads down there. Yeah. And I felt, and I was it feels like I have an extra hole down there. I know that sounds gross, but and then I was I asked my husband, I was I know this isn't going to look good. I was but what's going on down there? And he's yeah, it looks like you're sewn up and then not sewn up. So then I had a call. I went in and she's like, yeah, your stitches came out, and I was like, oh, that's great. So then she had to stitch me back up.
Wow.
So, yep, I had episiotomies for all 4. And then the last one, I was lucky enough I didn't need to. But seriously, the witch hazel pads are, if you keep them in the refrigerator, I really strongly suggest people using those. And they give you this like bottle to put warm water on, and warm water in. And those were my 2, like every single time I went to the bathroom, I used the warm water and those witch hazel pads because they were like amazing.
Well, is there anything else you want to add to your pregnancy or birth?
I really want women to listen to this and know that like after 35 is not possible. It is possible. And even after 40, I feel like people think like 40 is like the end, you're done, that you still can. Like there's some good eggs in there. Because here I had 2 professionals telling me, sorry, your eggs are probably bad. It's probably your age, and if you feel in your heart to keep going, whether you have to have donor eggs, like, or if you have to, I just feel like if you have that you can't explain, that you should just keep going, and that they should feel empowered by their bodies and not like that 40 or 35 or whatever is, the cutoff date and you missed the bus, kind of thing, that you still can be successful, I guess. I just find that, your not your website, but your Instagram page is so inspirational. And every time I would hear, oh, this lady was 45 and she had a baby, when I was like 42 or something, I was like, well, I'm 42, and I would just hear different things from, all the different groups I was in, that I feel like when you see those stories that you just are like, yes, women are meant to still have babies in their 40s. We're not that old.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned a little bit before, but do you have plans to have more kids in your 40s?
Well, I'm 47 now, and I know I'm here and I'm in so many different groups where people are 47, 46, 48. You hear about even like 49, but I mean, if it would happen, I would be like so happy, but we're not trying or anything like that.
What has been your biggest challenge being pregnant in your 40s?
My biggest challenge is I feel like everybody else. I feel that, I had friends joking like, oh, by this age, when the baby's this age, you're going to be this age, or, that kind of thing, where people are, I don't want to say naysayers or doomsday, but they're not super positive. I mean, I did have positive people around me, but there's just so much coming in, even from like the medical community, that make it seem like, like you're so high risk. And I feel like people are like, well, should I? I'm so old now. It is the most rewarding thing being a mom. And I feel like, honestly, my age makes it better than when I was younger, because when I was younger, I was also growing up, even when I was in like my 30s, I feel like I was like growing up. But now I just look at it and like people are like, oh my gosh, the baby's like not going to sleep, and oh, she's skipping a nap, or, those kind of things that like you hear parents talk about, but I feel for me, it's like, I can look back and say, it's a stage and you're going to move out of it. And so you should just like relish in the moment that you're in, because it's the best time of your life. I feel is like raising kids, and when they're young like this, and like, especially the newborn time, you're so tired, but it is absolutely the most amazing time. The first year is just, they go through this amazing transformation that everything I held, like people commented, I never put my baby down. I constantly held them, because especially the last 3, because I just felt like the first 2, it happened so fast and boom, they're graduated, that every moment I'm just like soaking it in, because it is so special. And I'm so grateful that I get to have these experiences with them, that everything, even like sometimes even a temper tantrum, I'm like, I think in my head, I'm going to miss this. I know, like you're going to miss the terrible twos and all those things, that everything is such a gift that I feel like as an older mom, I'm benefiting so much more than when I was younger, and I feel like, honestly, they keep you young, and I do think now when I go into the classroom with my daughters that I'm probably one of the oldest moms there, because I know I could probably be the mom to some of the parents that are in there, but it doesn't faze me because I just feel young at heart. And I think that, and I've been lucky enough. I hear so many stories about like, they ask me if that's your grandma, when you're with your kid or something. I've been lucky that I've never had that question. Like,
not with you.
Yeah, I've never had that question. And I'm always like worried that I'm going to get that question. But I just feel like so grateful, and everything is just such a gift.
Is there anything you'd recommend that would help prepare someone for pregnancy and birth over 40?
Gosh, I don't know. You just hear so many stories that when I stopped trying is when I got pregnant, kind of thing. And I literally stopped, like I stopped taking all of the medication.
You're the epitome of that.
I literally stopped because I was on every supplement, every vitamin you can think of. I was on it, and I stopped. And, it was probably luck, but it was just like a coincidence that it happened. But there was nothing that I can like adamantly say is what helped me. It was just my own determination to keep going. And honestly, I probably would have kept going, like miscarriage after miscarriage, until I was in menopause. Like honestly, I just felt that there was something that I couldn't describe of not giving up. Your pages like yours are what kept me going. Honestly. I mean, it just was like reading other people's success stories and hearing about other people's success stories added fuel to my fire of determination.
What advice would you give yourself when you were pregnant if you could go back?
I think I would tell myself that you're absolutely insanely beautiful because you don't feel beautiful. But when I look back at my pictures, I sent you one in the purple dress with the flowers.
I love it. Yeah.
My daughter took a whole shoot in the forest and everything with my younger daughters and my husband and stuff. And I cherish those pictures. Please take more pictures of yourself pregnant, because even though you feel large, when you look back, you're going to be like, I was actually kind of cute. Because it's just, I would tell myself that I'm beautiful, because I think that was a thing that you just feel so big, so large, and you just like, I can't believe I'm getting bigger and bigger, So I would tell myself that I am beautiful. Did an amazing job. And
That's awesome. Jenna, thank you so much for sharing your story. You have such a beautiful, empowering story.
I hope that it somehow touches somebody and helps them in any way, shape, or form.
Hey, Jenna actually emailed me later on, and she wanted to add a little detail. This is what her email says. There was something I forgot to mention about after the delivery that was different than my 4 previous deliveries. After I had her, I was unable to sleep for the hospital stay. I had insomnia normally, but this was different. I was in awe of her actually being there and safe in my arms. I just sat there holding her high on some sort of adrenaline or something. My husband went to sleep both nights, and I honestly just held her and looked at her, absolutely elated. At one point, 2 nurses came in for a shift change and asked if I had gone to sleep yet, and I said I was too happy to sleep. And then they were at the computer going over my chart, and one nurse pointed to the screen and said, I know why she's still up. And the other nurse said, that makes sense. I couldn't help but ask what in my chart gave an explanation to my euphoric high. One nurse said they were pointing at the information that I had 4 miscarriages before her. I was in this insanely happy haze over her finally being here. I was in the happy high after each baby because it's such a beautiful thing to bring a soul into this life. But this one was very special. It was weird, but I didn't want to put her down and sleep. And that wraps up another amazing episode on Over 40 Fabulous and Pregnant podcast. I loved Jenna's story. It was so empowering. And she also gave us so much extra education. I thought it was amazing. I definitely have a goal of catching my baby during delivery. I thought that was amazing. And if you enjoyed that episode also, please go to your Apple podcast player and give us a 5-star review. That helps us reach more women, and I would greatly appreciate it. And once again, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next Monday.